Alright, we're starting out with chapter 14 today, looking at the heart itself. We've already started with blood, and then we'll finish with the vessel network. So, a lot of the heart things are just going to be particularly anatomy, not so much the physiology behind it, but we will look at some of it. You need to know where the heart is located. A lot of the times, you guys, especially, when we're doing Pledge of Allegiance, you think your heart's way up here, on your chest, when actually it's way down lower. And how it's setting is kind of this way. So the tip of it is down here. And that's why when we were doing the fifth intercostal space, you're listening to that right ventricle actually, putting your stethoscope right over the top of it. So you can see how it's kind of lower, even below the nipple line. It's sitting about here. There's a diaphragm that it's resting on top of as well. So the very tip of it is the bottom here called the apex. You'll see that again in the pulmonary system when we look at the lungs. Lungs have apexes as well, except for they're at the top. The base, which you would think would be at the bottom, it's not. It's at the very top where the trunk is, where it's connecting and has some big vessels coming off, like the aorta and the subclavian coming in. Midline, you need to know, because we'll talk about midline shifts and things when you're looking at the heart, and mid-clavicle, so we're talking about that fifth intercostal space, mid-clavicular, and so you need to know what mid-clavicular means. Here, not so much. It's very important for x-rays. For us right now, it's not so important, but if we're looking for where to take the apical pulse, then knowing that the left mid-clavicular line, where that is, and where I would stick my stethoscope is important for us. So, the heart is sitting in the center of the chest, well, kind of off to the left, but it's also kind of encased in what we call a pericardial sac. So this sac is made up of some membranes. We've looked at, have we? Yeah, no, we haven't really looked at, we looked at membranes as far as generally when we talked about tissues, but we haven't really looked at any particular membranes just yet, so this will be the first one. The very outside of this sac is called your pericardium, so it's a fibrous, thick, tough sac. Your fibrous pericardium, the very outside, so all the shiny outside stuff. Then you have a pericardium that's going to be broken up into some things. So let's look at that. So again, this very outside layer is that pericardium. Pericardium is the very outside. Then we have a layer inside, just the inside of that sac, and you call that the parietal. So that's the parietal pericardium. Parietal, you're going to see again when we talk about lungs. It's the one that lines the inside of the thoracic cavity. And then you have a layer that sits right on the lungs. Just like this one. Anything that's sitting on top of an organ, we call it visceral. So it's your visceral layer or epicardium. Epi means what? From midterm. Yeah, above or on top of. So epicardium is right on top. This is the heart. So it's slapped right on top of the heart. So we have a sac, we have a layer inside that sac, and then we have a layer right on top of the heart. Both of these are serous membranes, so they're secreting what type of fluid? If they're serous membranes, they're secreting not mucus. Mucus is sticky. You don't want anything that's going to be sticking when that heart's beating and slapping up against the sac. So what kind of membrane would you want? Serous. You want serous fluid. Serous membranes secrete serous fluid. Couldn't be any easier. Serous membranes secrete serous fluid. What kind of consistency do they have? Slippery, yeah. It's clear, slippery. It reminds me, you're talking about mucus. When you have a really, really bad cold, that's thick and yellow. But think about when your just nose is running and it's clear and wet and slippery. That's what serous fluid looks like.
What's
Very
that?
slippery.
What's that that's going like behind the rib cage when the ribs or the lungs are like rubbing against it and it's like a slimy slippery fluid too?
That's the same stuff. It's serious. So when you're breathing and your lungs are inhaling and then exhaling, they're sliding up against the same type of membranes. You have a parietal pleura, pleura meaning lungs, so parietal lining the inside of the cavity. Same thing here. You have a parietal pericardium, so it's lining the inside of the pericardial sac. Then you have a visceral pleura, which is sitting right on top of the lungs, which we call it an epicardium or visceral pericardium that's sitting right on top. Both of them secrete serous fluid, so it's slippery, no friction. We don't want pain or rubbing, tearing up tissues. So there is a space in between that. So again, this is the heart beating, moving. This is the sac. And in between there, you have a space called the pericardial cavity. That's where that serous fluid is setting. You don't want anything else here. Problems that you can have is if you get any type of vessel break, or if you have it's called a cardiac tamponade, and that means, say that you've had a heart attack and one of these vessels somewhere was blocked, and say it was blocked here. If we blocked it here, anything below that, we'll do both of them, anything below that would die. So this whole area here would die because it's not getting any oxygen. Now you may not have, you may not drop dead right then and there, but you may have been, oh, I have some chest pain. Okay, I think it's just heartburn. It goes away. And then a day later you drop dead. Well, the problem is this tissue is weakened and dead. It can burst open, especially if it's down there by a ventricle, which has lots of pressure. So that breaks open, and then blood will start rushing into this cavity, this pericardial cavity, where it's not supposed to be. And it's called a cardiac tamponade. So what happens is this sac starts to fill up with blood quickly, and then it starts pushing on the heart because it has nowhere to go.
So like the heart explodes basically?
It doesn't necessarily explode. It'll create a leak in the wall, but then it's just filling up this closed sac. So the sac can't stretch and get any bigger than it is, so then it starts pushing pressure on the heart to where it'll finally stop. It's running out of blood, and then it's getting a lot of pressure put on it. There's not anything you can do. They're going to die very quickly.
So, wait, so like if that happens, like if I'm having like chest pains or whatever, and I do go to the doctor and it is that, they can't fix it anyways?
Now they can tap you and drain, but if it's a big tear like a ventricle, you're going to die within minutes. You won't make it to the hospital. Yeah, big deal. Big scary deal.
Wait, so how does that happen? How do I prevent that from happening?
You don't want any clots. You don't want to have a heart attack to begin with, so diet and exercise. If you got high blood pressure, keep the high blood pressure down. Okay, so that's the layers of the pericardial sac. We have the fibrous pericardium, then we have the parietal pericardium, the pericardial cavity, then we have the epicardium, which is sitting right on top of the heart. Then you're going to look at the layers of the heart muscle. We have layers within it as well. So you have the pericardium right on top, and as you're going deep into the heart, you have what's called the myocardium. When I think myocardium, I think M for muscle. That's the one that's really working. That's that muscle layer of the heart. So you have epicardium, slippery top layer of the heart. Then you have muscle layer, myocardium. And then the very inside, so it's not spelt in like I-N, but it's endocardium, inside of the heart. It's got a very particular characteristic as well. It's very slippery. Just like inside our blood vessels, it's very slippery. Why is that? So the blood doesn't what? Yeah, you don't want it to stick or clot. It needs to be able to slide around, because anything rough platelets start to stick to automatically, and then you create a big clot. You don't want a big clot, especially in the heart. You don't want clots in the heart, because what happens when the heart's beating and we have these clots in there? The what?
They can't push it out.
They will push it out, and that's what's bad. They'll spray out clots, so they'll push out a bunch of clots everywhere. And so one, they could go back to themselves, to the heart, cause a heart attack. They could travel to the brain, cause a stroke. They could go to the lungs and cause a PE,
What's that?
a pleural effusion, and it's going to block the vessels to the lungs, so you won't get any oxygen and you'll die. Either way, all of them are bad, bad results.
So exercise.
So take care of yourself, yes. Okay. All of this jazz here, we are going to learn inside and out. We'll do a big, huge heart. Weather's been nice. I may be able to do one outside. So we'll do a big heart and we'll walk through it. You can start studying and learning the parts of the heart, but like I said, we will go through it mechanically. You will walk through it, and every single person in here has to get 100 on it. So it may take you 10 tries, but you will eventually get it. And every single one of us, say Destiny goes through it and gets it right off the bat one time, she still has to stay there and watch everybody else go through it. Because I promise you, watching it 22 times, it will be cemented in your head. Jason.
So like when we walk through the heart.
I will have a huge heart drawn on the ground, and you'll walk through it. And as you're walking through it, you will name the parts of the heart. So you'll come in the superior or inferior vena cava into the right atrium, going through the tricuspid valve to the right ventricle, through the pulmonary artery, through the pulmonary vein or valve, then the pulmonary vein arteries, back through the lungs, through the pulmonary veins, to the left atrium, through the bicuspid, through the left ventricle, then through the aortic semilunar valve, through the aorta. So you'll have all of that. Then, once we get that down, we'll add the electrical part of it. So you'll know the SA valve, or no, the AV node, you'll know all that. But I promise you, you'll have it. Huh?
Why do we have to pass this?
Because this will be on your test.
Oh.
Yeah, this will be on your test. And cardiac, when it comes to nursing, how important is cardiac, Miss Witt? When it comes to nursing?
Very.
Extremely. It affects everything. Cardiac and respiratory system are your biggest ones. Exactly why you will hear over and over in any type of medical field, your ABCs. You always got to take care of your ABCs. So airway is number one. If you're not breathing, who cares about anything else? If you're not breathing, you will die. And then after airway is your airway, breathing, then circulation, so heart. So airway, is it open? 2, are they breathing? Then B or C would be circulation. Is their heart beating?
Oh. Okay. So say you go into cardiac arrest. What can you do?
Well, what would you do in cardiac arrest?